from real life to nightmare. 3. Disturbing true horror stories. I was about 4 or 5 years old when this happened. My parents had just separated. I didn't fully understand what was going on, but I knew that things were different. My mom had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was warm and quiet. She gave me my own room, but I never really slept there. I always ended up in her bed. It felt safer being close to her. The apartment was on the ground floor. Both our bedrooms were at the end of a hallway directly across from each other. In the summer, it would get really hot, so we kept the windows open at night. In my mom's room, the window was right behind the bed, just above the headboard. She had a screen over it to keep bugs out, but it still let in the breeze. That night started like any other. We brushed our teeth, turned off the lights, and lay down in bed. Our cat, a soft gray tabby, jumped up next to us and curled into a little ball near our feet. Everything was normal, but sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. At first, I wasn't sure what had disturbed me. The room was quiet, except for the hum of crickets outside. The moonlight came in through the open window, casting soft shadows on the walls. I sat up slowly, my tiny heart beating a little faster than usual. Then I noticed something odd. Our cat wasn't on the bed anymore. Instead, he was sitting in the doorway of my mom's room. The door was open, and I could partially see into my bedroom from where I was. The cat just sat there completely still, staring into my room. That was strange because our cat always stayed in bed with us. He hated being alone at night. I kept watching him. He didn't move for a few seconds. Then he got up and slowly walked into my bedroom. As he crossed the hallway, he let out a soft meow. Something about that moment made me uncomfortable. I turned to my mom and gently shook her shoulder. "Mom," I whispered, "wake up." She opened her eyes almost right away and looked at me, confused. "What's wrong?" I didn't even get to answer. We both looked back at the doorway, following my gaze, and what we saw made my blood turn cold. There was a man. He was standing in the hallway, right by the door to my bedroom. He had come out of my room, and now he was slowly moving down the hall toward the living room. We could only see part of his body from the light coming in through the window, but he was definitely real. For a second, nobody moved. We were frozen in fear. Then, without even thinking, my mom grabbed me. She picked me up in her arms, turned toward the window, and threw me through the screen. I landed outside on the soft grass with a small thud. It hurt a little, but not much. A few seconds later, my mom jumped out too. We started screaming. We screamed as loud as we could, hoping someone would hear. The night air felt cold against my skin, and I was shaking, not just from fear, but from confusion. Lights turned on in nearby apartments. Someone called 911. The police arrived pretty quickly. They searched the apartment, but didn't find anyone inside. There were no broken windows, no signs that someone had forced their way in. The only strange thing was the front door. It was unlocked. My mom swore she had locked it before bed. Not just the handle, but the deadbolt and the chain lock. She always did. She was careful like that, especially after the divorce, but the police couldn't explain it. They said the man must have come in through the front door and then left the same way. Maybe she had forgotten to lock it, they suggested. My mom insisted she hadn't. She remembered clearly locking everything before we went to sleep. A week passed. My mom didn't sleep much. I didn't either. I was too scared. I didn't even want to stay in that apartment anymore. Every sound made me jump. I kept thinking I saw someone in the hallway even when nobody was there. Then something even worse happened. My mom was cleaning the kitchen one afternoon. She opened a small closet near the water heater, one she didn't use often. Inside, she found a notebook. It wasn't ours. It was old and dirty. The cover was torn. Inside were pages filled with names, weird drawings, and strange notes. Some of the names were crossed out. Some of the drawings were of faces, angry, twisted faces, and others were of houses, maybe ours. There were also a pair of gloves and some used gum wrappers tucked between the pages. My mom froze. She immediately called the police again. They came back and looked at everything. They took the notebook and the gloves. But even then, there wasn't much they could do. The man had clearly been inside the apartment at some point. Maybe he had been hiding there for hours. Maybe even before we went to sleep. That closet wasn't very big, but it was big enough for someone to crouch inside, especially if they were patient. The police said it was possible the man had slipped in during the day while the door was open. Maybe my mom had gone to check the mail or take out the trash. Maybe he knew the schedule. Maybe he had been watching us. That thought made my stomach turn. We never found out who he was. He never came back. But for a long time after that, I was afraid of the dark. I wouldn't sleep with my back to the door. I always checked every closet, under every bed, behind every curtain. Even now, many years later, I still get nervous if I hear a noise at night that I can't explain. People always think horror stories come from movies or books, but sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happen. They don't need ghosts or monsters, just a man in the hallway, a quiet apartment, and a window open to the summer air. That's all it took for our safe world to turn into a nightmare. And the worst part? If I hadn't woken up, we might never have known he was there at all. I was sitting in my room, just relaxing after a long day at work. My room was on the second floor, small but comfortable, with a desk, a bed, and soft lighting. I liked the quiet upstairs. It helped me calm down after being around people all day. My little brother was downstairs in the living room, watching TV. His laughter now and then floated up the stairs. The dog, a sweet German Shepherd mix named Daisy, There's an old abandoned
was lying
house
just
next to
outside
mine.
my door in the hallway,
It's been there since
sleeping
before I
peacefully.
moved in. I always
It was
thought
an
it looked
ordinary
creepy.
evening,
The
the
windows
kind
are
of
dirty.
peaceful routine
The
I was
paint
used
is
to.
peeling off the walls.
I was
and the
scrolling
front
through my
yard is a
phone,
mess.
maybe thinking of
Weeds
taking
and
a
dead
nap,
branches cover
when
the porch,
suddenly
like the house
Daisy
is trying
started
to hide
acting
itself.
strange.
The
At
strange
first,
thing is,
it was just a
the
growl,
house isn't owned
low
by the
and
city
deep.
or some bank.
Then she jumped
The
up
owner,
with a loud
an
bark.
old man, moved away
I
to
could
California
hear her nails
25
clacking
years
against
ago.
the wooden floor, like she
never
was
came
running
back,
in circles or
never
trying
sold
to
it,
attack something.
Never had it
She was
cleaned or
barking and
fixed.
growling,
Everyone
and then let
just
out a
ignored the
long,
house
strange
like it wasn't
howl
there.
that sent chills down my
But
back.
I've always been
Before
curious.
I could get up to check,
What
I
kind
heard a
of
voice,
person just
a male
leaves
voice,
everything behind
calm
like
and
that?
clear, say,
One night,
"Ah, that's
I
a good
couldn't
girl."
sleep. It was
My
raining,
heart skipped a
soft
beat.
at first.
The voice
then
was
heavier.
just outside my door.
The wind made the
I
trees
thought
creak. And the
maybe
street
it
was
was our
silent.
roommate.
Around
He often
1
came home
a.m.,
early
I
without
looked
warning.
out my window
So
and
I
stared
replied,
at the house next door.
"Oh, you're home early."
I don't know what
As
came
I stood
over
up
me.
and walked toward
Maybe
the door,
it was the rain or
I opened
just
it.
the feeling that I
There
had
was
to
no
know.
one. No
I
roommate,
grabbed my flashlight
stranger.
and a pair of gloves.
just
I put on
Daisy
my
wagging
boots
her
and a
tail,
jacket
standing
and walked
still and
outside.
staring at the far
My
end of
heart
the
was
hallway,
racing.
like she could see
The
something
front
there.
door was locked, of course.
But there was nothing.
But one of the
The
basement
hallway
windows,
was empty.
the one behind the
I
bushes,
froze.
looked loose.
Daisy wasn't
I pushed
looking
on
at
it
me.
with my gloved
She
hand,
was focused
and
on
it
that
creaked
one
open.
spot down the hall,
The air coming
like someone
out
was still
smelled like
standing
dust
there.
and rot.
Her tail wagged
I took a
slowly,
deep breath,
and she gave a little
pointed my
whine like she
flashlight
was happy,
inside,
but
and climbed
nervous.
through.
That
The
didn't
basement
make
was
any
dark
sense.
and cold.
I stepped
The
out into
floor
the
was
hall,
covered in old
looked both
newspapers
ways,
and spider
Still
webs
nothing.
hung from the ceiling
Not a sound
like
from
curtains.
downstairs either.
But the thing that caught
Just
my
then,
eye
my little
was the
brother
grand
came
piano.
stomping up the stairs.
It stood in the corner.
Dude, what are you
still
doing?
shiny, even
Why
though
are you getting
everything else
Daisy
was
all
covered
riled
in
up?
dust.
He looked
I touched
annoyed.
the keys.
I
A few
didn't do
notes rang
anything,
out.
I said.
Sour, sad,
I thought you were messing
out
with
of
her.
tune. There was more.
No, I was watching
a shelf
TV.
Full of
I heard a
World War
voice.
II helmets,
Thought it was you
medals,
or maybe
and even
James
a
coming
uniform. There was a
Now
box of
we were
letters
both
tied
quiet.
together with ribbon.
I could tell
all
from his
yellow and
face
stiff
that
with
he'd
age.
heard it too.
I found
The
what
exact
looked like a
same
signed
voice.
Elvis poster,
Calm,
half rolled and
male,
pinned behind a cabinet.
familiar, but not quite.
It was amazing.
We looked at each
So
other,
much history
and
just
then,
left to rot.
like a silent agreement,
Then I
we
found
grabbed what
something
we
else.
had.
A
I took
broken
my
picture
butterfly
frame.
knife from
its
my
glass
desk drawer.
cracked in the middle.
He went down to the
The
garage
photo
and
inside
came
showed
back
a
up with
man
his
in a
BB gun.
tuxedo and a woman
Not
in a
the
wedding
most
dress.
dangerous weapons,
They looked so
but they
happy.
gave us a sense of control.
But the frame was on the
We
ground
checked
like
every
someone had
inch
thrown
of that
it.
house,
Next to
every
it was
closet,
a smashed
under
violin,
every bed,
and
behind
that,
every door,
a music stand
even the attic
bent
and
out
the
of shape.
basement.
Something had
All the
happened
doors
down
were
here.
locked, all the
Something
windows
bad.
shut.
I
Nothing
went
was
up
out
the
of
basement
place.
stairs to
No
the main
sign
floor.
that anyone had come
My
or
flashlight
gone.
flickered,
But
I
something
tapped
had
it, and
spoken.
it kept going.
We tried to
The
forget
kitchen
about
was
it,
like a time
told
machine.
ourselves it was the
Molded
TV
foods still sat
or
on
our
plates.
imagination.
The fridge door was open,
But
and
that
inside
wasn't the
were
end.
cans of beer.
Over the next
now
few
frozen
days,
solid.
Daisy started
There were
acting
pots on the
weird.
stove, and
She'd
the
stare
burners
into
were black
corners
with
of the
age.
room and growl at
Everything was
nothing.
still there.
Sometimes
Like the
at night,
people who lived
she'd
here
bark
just
suddenly,
walked out in the middle
then
of
run
cooking
upstairs
dinner
like she was
and never
afraid of
came
something
back.
downstairs.
The living room
One
had an
time,
old couch,
she refused to
sunken
go
in
into the
middle,
hallway near my
and
room,
a TV that looked
just
like it hadn't
stopped
worked
at the
in
doorway and
decades.
whined.
The lights
And then
were
I
still
started
on.
hearing it again.
I swear to God,
Not
the
just the
ceiling
voice.
light in the hallway buzzed
Footsteps.
softly.
Slow,
It hadn't
heavy
been turned
ones at
off in
night.
25 years.
Sometimes they'd stop right
I walked
outside my
slowly,
room.
every step
I'd open the
creaking.
door, but there was never
I passed
anyone
the
there.
unmade bed
Once,
in a room that
I
smelled
woke up
like
to the
dust
sound of breathing.
and something worse,
Not mine.
like rotting
Not
meat.
the dog's.
I
Deep,
didn't want to open
slow,
the closet,
like someone
didn't want to check
sleeping
the
right
bathroom.
next to me.
But then
I sat
heard
up
it,
fast and turned on the light,
crying,
but the room was empty.
soft, low,
Daisy
and
was
sad,
asleep in the corner.
like a child
I
trying
told
not
my
to
brother.
be heard.
He looked
It was
pale
coming
and
from
said he'd
upstairs.
heard the same thing in his
I
room.
froze. It
Breathing,
didn't make sense.
footsteps,
The house was empty.
whispers.
No one had lived
We
here for
stopped
decades.
talking about it out
But
loud.
I know what I
It felt
heard.
like talking about it
I
made it
thought
stronger.
maybe it was an animal.
One night,
A raccoon
about 2 weeks
or a
after
bird
that
trapped
first
in the
incident,
attic,
I was
but
alone.
it didn't sound like that.
My brother had gone
It
to a
sounded
friend's house
human.
for the night, and our
My
roommate
legs felt
was
like they
on
were
a
made of
weekend
lead,
trip.
but I moved
I
anyway.
didn't want to admit it,
The
but
stairs
I was a little
creaked under my
scared to be
weight.
home alone.
Every step I
Daisy
took,
stayed
the
close to
crying
me
got a
all
little
evening.
clearer.
She followed
came
me
from
from
one
room
of
to
the
room
side
like she
rooms on
didn't
the
want me
second
to be
floor.
alone.
The door to
It
the
was
room
around
half
midnight
open.
when the scratching
Light
started.
from the hallway barely
Soft,
reached inside.
almost gentle
I
at
pushed
first.
the door open.
From the inside of the
Nothing.
closet. I stared
room
at
was
it for a
empty.
long time,
Just a
hoping
dusty
it
crib
was
in the
my
corner.
imagination.
Old toys scattered on the
Then
floor.
the scratching got
and
louder,
wallpaper peeling
like
from
nails
the walls.
on wood.
The
Slow,
crying had stopped.
steady. Scratch.
Suddenly behind me,
scratch,
I heard a loud crash.
scratch.
I
I
spun
got up
around,
slowly
heart
and
pounding.
walked over to the closet
Something
door.
had fallen down the
My
stairs.
hand was shaking.
I ran to look.
Daisy stood beside
One
me,
of the picture
growling
frames
low
from the
in her
hallway
throat,
was shattered
teeth
at the
bared.
bottom.
I reached
But
out,
I hadn't touched
grabbed
it.
the handle, and
No
flung
wind
the
had
door
blown
open.
through. It was
Nothing.
like something had pushed it off.
Absolutely nothing.
That's when I knew I
But the
wasn't
scratching
alone.
sound didn't stop.
I turned back toward
It
the
was
bedroom,
coming from behind the wall,
and then I saw
the
it,
back of the
a
closet.
shadow.
That was
Not
impossible.
It
There was
moved
nothing
across
behind
the
that
wall
wall
like it was
except
walking
more
slowly.
wall.
But there
But the
was no
sound
one
kept
there.
going.
My flashlight
Scratch.
flickered again,
Scratch.
and I heard the crying
I closed
start
the
up
door,
once more.
sat on my bed,
This time,
and waited,
right
hoping
behind
it would
me.
stop.
I ran.
It didn't.
I
Then
didn't
the voice
think.
came again.
I didn't breathe.
Good
I just
girl.
ran.
It came
Down
from
the
inside
stairs,
the closet.
through the kitchen, across
Daisy
the
barked
basement,
like mad,
and out the
then
window.
ran out of the room and down the
I
stairs.
scraped my leg on the way
I
out.
followed her,
but didn't stop.
not even bothering to
I
shut the
sprinted
door
back to
behind
my
me.
house, locked the
I
doors,
stayed downstairs
and
that
didn't
night,
sleep the
all
rest
the
of
lights
the night.
on, with Daisy
The
curled up
next
next to
morning,
me on the couch.
I told myself it was a
I
dream.
didn't sleep. sleep.
That I
I don't
imagined
think
it.
she did
Maybe
either.
I was half asleep.
The next
Maybe it was
day, I
just the
asked my
house
brother to
playing
help me
tricks
check
on my
behind the
mind.
closet wall.
Old
We
places
even
can do
borrowed a
that.
small inspection
They
camera
breathe
from
in
a
strange
neighbor
ways.
and made a tiny
But
hole
a
in the
week
wall.
later, I saw
Nothing.
something from my bedroom
Just
window.
empty space and old
the light
wood
in the
beams.
hallway was off.
No animals, no
and
loose
the crib
wires,
in the upstairs
no
window
explanation.
was rocking slowly, even
After
though
that,
there was no
things
wind.
slowed down.
I haven't gone
The
back.
sounds became
I
less
don't
frequent.
even look at the house
Maybe
anymore.
once a week.
I keep my
Sometimes
curtains
a door
closed
would
and
open
my
on its
doors
own,
locked
or
at night.
Daisy would bark at nothing.
But sometimes,
But
when I'm
nothing
lying
like
in bed,
before.
I hear it.
Until one night,
Soft, low
maybe 2 months
crying
later, we were
from
all
next
home
door.
again. Me,
And I wonder how
my
many
brother,
others have gone
the roommate,
inside,
and Daisy.
and how many never
We
came
were
back
sitting
out.
in the living room playing video games when we heard it. From upstairs. Good girl. This time, all three of us heard it. We froze. Daisy stood up slowly, growling, and walked to the stairs. She didn't bark. She just looked up, tail low, ears flat. My brother and I looked at each other. No jokes. No pretending. We grabbed the same weapons and walked upstairs together. The hallway was cold. Too cold. Every door was wide open. Even the bathroom door, which we always kept shut because Daisy loved stealing the toilet paper. The air felt wrong. Heavy. We checked every room. Nothing. But in my room, written in the dust on my desk, were the words, "Good girl." We moved out a week later. Never saw anything. Never caught anyone. But something was in that house. Something that knew us, watched us, and liked our dog. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if Daisy hadn't barked that first night. If I had just ignored the voice, or worse, answered it. Some nights I still hear it, faint and far away when I can't sleep. Good girl. And I wonder if it ever really stayed behind, or if it came with us.
There's an old abandoned house next to mine. It's been there since before I moved in. I always thought it looked creepy. The windows are dirty, the paint is peeling off the walls, and the front yard is a mess. Weeds and dead branches cover the porch, like the house is trying to hide itself. The strange thing is, the house isn't owned by the city or some bank. The owner, an old man, moved away to California 25 years ago. He never came back, never sold it, never had it cleaned or fixed. Everyone just ignored the house like it wasn't there. But I've always been curious. What kind of person just leaves everything behind like that? One night, I couldn't sleep. It was raining, soft at first, then heavier. The wind made the trees creak, and the street was silent. Around 1 a.m., I looked out my window and stared at the house next door. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the rain or just the feeling that I had to know. I grabbed my flashlight and a pair of gloves. I put on my boots and a jacket and walked outside. My heart was racing. The front door was locked, of course, but one of the basement windows, the one behind the bushes, looked loose. I pushed on it with my gloved hand, and it creaked open. The air coming out smelled like dust and rot. I took a deep breath, pointed my flashlight inside, and climbed through. The basement was dark and cold. The floor was covered in old newspapers, and spider webs hung from the ceiling like curtains. But the thing that caught my eye was the grand piano. It stood in the corner, still shiny even though everything else was covered in dust. I touched the keys. A few notes rang out. Sour, sad, out of tune. There was more. A shelf full of World War II helmets, medals, and even a uniform. There was a box of letters tied together with ribbon, all yellow and stiff with age. I found what looked like a signed Elvis poster, half rolled and pinned behind a cabinet. It was amazing. So much history just left to rot. Then I found something else. A broken picture frame, its glass cracked in the middle. The photo inside showed a man in a tuxedo and a woman in a wedding dress. They looked so happy, but the frame was on the ground like someone had thrown it. Next to it was a smashed violin, and beside that, a music stand bent out of shape. Something had happened down here. Something bad. I went up the basement stairs to the main floor. My flashlight flickered, but I tapped it and it kept going. The kitchen was like a time machine. Molded food still sat on plates. The fridge door was open, and inside were cans of beer, now frozen solid. There were pots on the stove, and the burners were black with age. Everything was still there, like the people who lived here just walked out in the middle of cooking dinner and never came back. The living room had an old couch, sunken in the middle, and a TV that looked like it hadn't worked in decades. The lights were still on. I swear to God, the ceiling light in the hallway buzzed softly. It hadn't been turned off in 25 years. I walked slowly, every step creaking. I passed the unmade bed in a room that smelled like dust and something worse, like rotting meat. I didn't want to open the closet, didn't want to check the bathroom. But then I heard it. Crying. Soft, low, and sad, like a child trying not to be heard. It was coming from upstairs. I froze. It didn't make sense. The house was empty. No one had lived here for decades. But I know what I heard. I thought maybe it was an animal, a raccoon or a bird trapped in the attic, but it didn't sound like that. It sounded human. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I moved anyway. The stairs creaked under my weight. Every step I took, the crying got a little clearer. It came from one of the side rooms on the second floor. The door to the room was half open. Light from the hallway barely reached inside. I pushed the door open. Nothing. The room was empty. Just a dusty crib in the corner, old toys scattered on the floor, and wallpaper peeling from the walls. The crying had stopped. Suddenly, behind me, I heard a loud crash. I spun around, heart pounding. Something had fallen down the stairs. I ran to look. One of the picture frames from the hallway was shattered at the bottom, but I hadn't touched it. No wind had blown through. It was like something had pushed it off. That's when I knew I wasn't alone. I turned back toward the bedroom, and then I saw it. A shadow. Not mine. It moved across the wall like it was walking slowly, but there was no one there. My flashlight flickered again, and I heard the crying start up once more, this time right behind me. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just ran. Down the stairs, through the kitchen, across the basement, and out the window. I scraped my leg on the way out, but didn't stop. I sprinted back to my house, locked the doors, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told myself it was a dream. That I imagined it. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe it was just the house playing tricks on my mind. Old places can do that. They breathe in strange ways. But a week later, I saw something from my bedroom window. The light in the hallway was off, and the crib in the upstairs window was rocking slowly even though there was no wind. I haven't gone back. I don't even look at the house anymore. I keep my curtains closed and my doors locked at night. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I hear it. Soft, low crying. From next door. And I wonder how many others have gone inside, and how many never came back out.
If you like the video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.